Okay, Brad, I got your note on what you were thinking about all this. I have to say that this is very close. There's a lot of really good things going on here. I feel like I always say that, but I often feel like that. It never ceases to amaze me how often someone feels like they're struggling with something, and there's just like a couple things that they're having a hard putting their finger on, that once they break through those couple things, that it's just going to be like, I can see what it would look like in my head with the things that I know you need to fix to be fixed. And you're going to be very happy with it once it's done, I'm sure. So thanks for sending this in, obviously. And, I think I have some pretty good tips for you. Let's dive in. Okay. So, there's I think a number of things that run cycles and walk cycles are always all about, body mechanics. Everyone's talking about body mechanics. And really what body mechanics are, when like my definition of body mechanics is, the body's movement of all its sophisticated little bits and pieces, all its parts, in a cooperative way in order to move the mass that is the body around the world. So we're just a complex series of levers and pivot points, and we're propelling ourselves around the world, ourselves being a big water balloon sack essentially. And this is really what body mechanics are all about, is how do you master understanding all of the little bits and pieces, all the cohesion between all those parts in order to achieve locomotion. Because, we take it for granted. We've been around for a while. Depending on how old you are, but I'm sure you're old enough to be around long enough to just take for granted movement, like basic walking and running. I have a 5-year-old, and she's still figuring it out. But at the same time, it's amazing watching her do something like figure skating, or she's not figure skating. She's just learning how to skate, and how quickly she picks it up because her brain is on that. It's in that mode where it's like she's really in tune with what her body's doing, so she can sort things out. All this to say that all the counterbalances and all of the interesting things that are going on automatically for us, it's quite amazing. And so it's not a surprise that animating a run or a walk cycle, especially a run, I find, is tricky. Because it's like there's a lot of moving parts, and they all have to be doing the right thing at the right time, and doing it together in the right way. Otherwise, it starts to feel a little bit weird. So I really feel like that's most of what your issues are. It's like these couple little details. Let's dig into it. So I think one of the first things I would say, or I'm just going to kind of call them out in no particular order. I'd say one of the first things I notice is the arms. The arms feel very, very passive. And what I mean by that is they feel a little bit behind the action, when in reality, they should feel like they're part of the driving part of the action. This is super important to nail, in my opinion. A lot of animations get this wrong. If it's passive, it'll feel like a jog. And that's okay, because jogs are relaxed. You're not driving anywhere. You're kind of just casually hopping somewhere in a way. Runs are different. There's a lot more tension, and the body is connected, and it's really driving together. I have some reference I'm going to show you just to point out all the things I'm talking about, and what it would look like in a real person running. So when you scrub through here, you'll notice, if I just play this again, I want you to just sit. I just want you to watch the arms. Do you notice how the arms feel like they're actually dragging behind the action? There's an overlap happening here. If anything, they should be slightly driving, in my opinion, but more or less pretty much tied to the essentially the flex and the thrust that's happening in the leg and in the torso. They should all be feeling like one cohesive movement together. But if I slow this down, you'll see that the leg kind of, well, for one, the leg is also kind of in a big hurry to like not stick in this position at all. It just kind of gets into this position and then immediately starts to extend towards the ground. I find like a lot of runs that look a bit better is if you can try to get that leg out in front a little bit faster, and then let it favor there is going to go a long way. So it feels like a real drive, as opposed to just this constant kind of fluid movement that just repeats. It's, there's a bit more bias to a run, in my opinion, bias to the poses, especially the lunge, like those classic, iconic, stride poses of a run. And we're not seeing any of that here. Let's switch over really quickly. I'm going to try to confirm all the things I'm talking about one by one with using this reference. I'm using Rhino House. If you don't know about Rhino House, you should. This is not a sponsored video by any stretch of imagination, but I use it all the time to teach. And I also use it for my own work. If I feel like I need some reference that I can't get any other way, this is a great place to go. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, cheated. It's going to show up later and it's going to surprise me. The reason I like it is it's pretty comprehensive. Like there's a lot of good data in here, but the thing I love about it is the 2 angles. So thank you, Rhino House team, for understanding what animators need. Fun fact, the people who run this site are animation veterans. So what I like about this right now is we can really see what's going on in the 2 dimensions very, very easily. A 1/3 view really doesn't usually cut it. Not to mention, cameras are tracking. They're moving at a constant velocity, or at least as best they could. And I think they probably then stabilized it on top of that. So it's pretty nice because you get this feeling of the overall average framing of a character. It's sort of matching. And it allows you to sort of see things like on the spot, which is a little easier for us animators to pick out what's working, what's not working. So I want you to take a look at the same detail we were just talking about, this idea of driving arms. You'll notice let's do it right from here. Okay, so this left leg is going to be lunging and the back leg, the right leg, is going to be pushing. And you'll notice that those 2 things are going to happen in unison at the same time that the upper body, the torso and the arm, will also be feeling like it's tied to that same real mechanism. Let's look at this frame by frame. Do you see this? Look, this left knee gets into its maximum position right here, pretty much the same frame that right arm does. The right arm is there and it favors after that. It's already there and it's just sort of hanging out. Another thing you'll notice is that the thigh is like, it gets there and it stays for 2 frames. It's there, which kind of gives you that slight feeling of a favor. So if I go back, you'll see that your leg gets up there, like the thigh just gets there and immediately tries to depart. I mean, it's a little bit of a favor there, but I think you could probably play with that a little bit to try to get a little bit more feeling of that real, hang on to that drive pose. Because that stride pose, that driving pose, is the thing that kind of resonates, and it's sort of, you want it to sit on the person's, brain a little bit, because it's what makes the run look so graphic. So you'll notice again, your leg is kind of it's getting into this position, but this arm is got like 3 or 4 frames behind it. It's got to be up there with that action. Otherwise it feels like it's dragging behind. And it's not part of the actual thrust. Runs are just constant thrusts. If you really think about a run, it's really just a complex series of jumps that's been balanced in a way that it can be cyclical. That it can catch itself, catch itself, and always preserve the momentum. And if anything, the character is oriented in a way to continue pushing the momentum to go faster and faster, which is why you see the characters leaning so much. Speaking of that lean, no, that's actually not so bad. I was going to say that where the heel lands here and the foot lands might be a little bit too far forward, but I think it's okay. So yeah, arms, that's a thing. The other thing I'd say on the list would be lack of spine compression. Now, you said this in your notes. You said, Brent, I feel like, I've been using some reference, and paraphrasing, of course, and I have taken this to the point where I think I can't take it any further with maybe like without a little bit of feedback, which is hopefully where I come in. The body mechanics specifically is something you're trying to get back into and try to refresh yourself. But at the same time, you also noted specifically this idea of an attempt to try to compress the spine, which is awesome, which means that you're supposed to be doing it. But it wasn't working out for you. You said you were compressing the spine, but then you needed to counter animate the head. Well, I got news for you. The spine does definitely need to compress here to make it really feel like it's also part of this thrust. Without it, it'll feel like the spine is being lazy and it's just like the arms and limbs are just moving around. As a matter of fact, I could argue that it's the torso and the hips that are the main part of that thrust, and the arms and legs are extensions of that. That energy comes from the core and it radiates outwards. So if you don't have it in the core, it just looks like a puppet that's just, frolicking its limbs. It doesn't feel like it's contributing towards a drive. So you'll see if you play this again, you don't have any evidence that I can see. There's a little bit, I feel like you're doing a little bit of, there's some squash and stretch or something in the torso, which is good. It's definitely a good start. But what I think you need more of is shape. You want to play with that C curve, right? You want it like the compression should feel like this and the lunge should feel like this. So it feels like it's doing this. Now I'm exaggerating. It's not nearly going to be needing to be that much different, but like ideally you have like an arc like this on the stretch and a little bit of a compression on the down. Let's go take a look at our reference. So if we go over into the reference here and we can scrub through, we're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. So I want you to pay close attention to just the shape of the torso. Okay, let me bring my little pen out here. And I didn't really organize myself very well here. I got my Wacom tablet I got my keyboard on top of it. I just have to listen to me complain like an old man. Okay, so pen in my hand. Let's do this. If we take a closer look at what's happening, like I want you to notice this. Like if you look carefully, you'll notice like character kind of goes, hold on, where am I? I keep getting, oh, that's why, because I was on the edge. Right around here-ish, there's kind of a very subtle, oh no. Why is it not working now? Okay, apparently I can draw with my mouse, but I can't draw with my pen. I don't know why. That's super weird because it's clearly moving the mouse or the cursor around. Okay, well, I'm going to attempt, albeit probably very terribly, to draw with my mouse. So if you look carefully, you'll see there's a very subtle curve like this. Okay? I mean, you got to squint a little bit, and if anything, maybe it's a little bit straight versus curve, but if I would exaggerate it a little bit so you could just barely feel that curve. Okay? Now compare that with this. The shape that is clearly kind of arcing back that kind of runs like this, okay? This is important. This change in C curve expresses the compression versus the extension, and that is what you're going to use. And if you hit play, you can see it. It's like kind of like this. It's like an undulating shape, okay? This is mega super important, and if you can manage to put it in there, this animation will be way better off. Now, I will hint at something here. I have a bit of a technique for this. What you usually end up doing here, from at least what I end up doing, is for those compression poses, these guys here. What I'm actually doing is I am rolling the head forward. What you don't want is you do not want the head, which is I think probably I didn't see what you had because you didn't hand it in like this. But you kind of hinted at the idea of needing to counter animate the head. If you watch the head, you'll notice that like it really doesn't cross that threshold. What you don't want is like I call it the pecking chicken that a lot of people get with their when they're animating a run cycle and they try to give it some compression. Because when you roll the spine, if it's an FK spine, what you're going to end up with is the character's going to roll forward. So what I do to compensate for that is I take the hips right here. Let me get rid of this poop here. Where's my eraser? Where the hell are you, eraser? Is there an eraser? I'm not sure if there's an eraser in here. I always forget. I guess I can just maybe undo. Will undo work? Oh, yay. So, when you roll your hips forward, your spine forward, what I do is I take the main spine control, and I'm talking about the master hip controller, the one that if on most rigs, if you rotate it, the whole upper body moves with it. I'll roll it backwards to counter the amount of movement that my head now moved forwards. It's the only time I rotate that master controller. I use the pelvis controller to control just the lower part of the body. I use that for like the twist and the tilt, of the hips, but I don't typically ever touch that hip controller the main one on a run cycle. It's only to allow me to counter animate that the whole upper body, and then I just do the opposite on the other pose, because now you're going to arc it backwards. Then I need to counter and roll the hips forward, which makes sense if you think about it, because look at the angle here. So I kind of want the hips to feel a little bit like this here. So they need to be part of that lean forward on that arc. And then back here, I need it to be like kind of what I drew there already. It's like it's rolled back compared to that other pose. So I want you to try that. Let me know how it goes. Like email me, poke me somehow on Discord, or maybe hand this in again. I'd be super mega happy to check it out and see how you made out with these suggestions. But that is going to go a long way towards helping you out because you really need those shapes to change. Okay, what's next on the list? We have side to side from the front view is moving in the wrong direction. So at first glance, I thought it was just moving too much. And then I'm like, no, that's not what it is. So I want to take a look at the pattern here. So Spider-Man is striking the ground with the right foot. Okay. And then on the lunge, you'll notice that the character is leaning to like after that lunge, you'll feel the character lean over to that foot that was just on the ground. Okay. And then of course it alternates. Let's go take a look at the reference. I think you'll find that it's literally completely opposite to that. So here we have the left leg pushing off the ground. Wait, what was I saying before? It was, pushing off the ground. So there's a push off the ground, but notice instead of it leaning, yours is actually bending this way. Sorry for the bad mouse drawings. It's bending this way after this kickoff. But as you can see, he's clearly tilting in the opposite direction. And you can really feel that it really kind of like that this push here is what sends it kind of feeling like this, which makes sense. The body is kind of working like there's C curves that run through the character from the front view as well, right? You can really feel this C curve like this, and then C curve like this, okay? So just remember those C curves. Remember those lines of action. If you make sure that they're all working together so there's good flow through the body, you're probably doing something right. If you're going against the grain, you're probably doing something wrong. Okay, that was a quick one. Let's jump to the last point I think I have, which is... Actually, I lie. I have 2 more points. So we have... the head feels a little stiff, feeling from the front. So if you take a look here... The reason why it feels stiff to me is it feels kind of like whenever the head feels like it's kind of connected to it's moving because it's fused, like the neck is fused to the spine. That's what it kind of feels like. I feel like I get the feeling that, I mean, it's not exactly, I'm being unfair. There is a little bit of overlap there, but it's not very readable. Let's take a look at what we're seeing on an actual run reference again. Let me just clear all of this business. Clear. Okay. I don't see really any of that. I think that when someone's focused and running, they have a tendency to be like very focused. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that we're predatorial with not triangular, the depth perception, like eyes, like quick biology lesson, and predators and omnivores tend to have not always, tend to have their eyes mounted on the front of their frontal plane. This allows them to have binocular vision. It allows them to hunt and get distance. Like if you know someone who's blind in one eye, you'll probably hear them complain at some point about them, rightfully so, about them having a lack of depth perception. Because without that second eye, we don't have stereographic vision and our brain can't process depth. It's just the way it is. I mean, if you've ever played that game where you do this, you put your finger in front of your eye, like your face like this, and you could close one eye and then the finger's bouncing around. And that happens. There's less of that bouncing the further it gets away. That's because of perspective and our eyes. The amount of offset between those two different images is less and less and less the farther it gets away. Your brain is in real time calculating the difference between those images and essentially communicating the concept of depth to you at all times. So all this to say, I tend to run off on random tangents all the time. I apologize. The idea here is that we tend to stabilize our head when we're running. We don't want a lot of this because it's hard to target our prey, whatever we're chasing. We learned to run fast way back in the day because if we didn't run fast, we would starve to death. So we were good at running away from things that are chasing us, but also very, very good at doing the hunting part of the hunting gathering that we did, our ancestors did many, many years ago. So So just remember that head should be relatively stable. I do like the small amount of like secondary on the head. I think it's always nice to put a little bit. As you can see, there's probably a little bit on him here. Actually, he's pretty rock solid. He's got a very serious run. This is subjective. I think that you can add a little bit. Just be careful not to add too much. And I don't think you added too much at all. I think you have a respectable amount of overlap here. but I would try to get rid of the side to side. If anything, you're lacking a sort of a tilt, because you'll notice that the head is almost always pretty straight up, but yet that's very different considering this kind of stuff that's happening where you have some tilting going on. So the head tends to try to counter that, you know, and any good rig will allow you to sort of change the space that rotation's operating out of, and try to make it so you don't have to counter animate all the time and just keep the rotation the way it is. And maybe add a little bit of just a little bit of overlap so it doesn't feel like completely robot. Like you don't want him to look like the Terminator, or maybe you do. He's Spider-Man. He should have more character than Terminator. Okay, I think I'm on the last one now so last one I think is the lack of forward thrust. So this is one of those things that if you get this right, it sort of levels up your run in a big way, because a lot of people just don't think about it. Now, I don't know if this is something that, like, is this for a game? I don't know, like it's a run cycle on the spot, so it kind of screams game to me, or it might just be like you want to practice run cycles and put it on your demo reel. I don't know. But I can tell you, get out of here. I can tell you that lost my train of thought all completely. Yeah, the thrust. I can tell you that if it is for a video game, or it doesn't really matter, for anything for that matter, what happens is often when people make animations on the spot, they tend to remove everything on the spine except for the hips, except for side to side and up and down. That's obviously necessary, but they tend to remove the thrust part of it. Because here's the thing. People, when they're running at a certain, like a constant velocity, which is actually not true. There's going to be always these small spikes of velocity right on the thrust. And you can actually see evidence of that right here. And I see this on motion capture data all the time, so I know that it's there. You'll notice if you watch very carefully his pelvis. Let me just slow it down a little bit here. Watch, again, he's pushing here. His whole body is going to drive. His hips are going to push this way. It's pushing up and forward. It's like literally pushing along this vector here. Okay. And so you're going to, because it's such a big push, it's helping keeping the character moving at a constant speed, but there are there's friction, and there's air friction. There's things that are always kind of trying to slow you down a little bit. And so there's always these small, noticeable, it's not small, but noticeable spikes in velocity forward. So watch this. Like, take a look at, let me add a grid here so you can better appreciate the movement on the horizontal plane on the hips on this thrust. There it is. And then it falls back. And here at the I'll just bring it back to the beginning again. And there it is again. And there it is again. So you can measure, like, this is, look at his butt is way back here. Oh, it doesn't let me draw when I have the grid on. There's his butts here. And now it's like over here. So let me just jump between those two. Okay, there's something wrong with my interface. It's not putting the little ticks here, which is annoying. I don't know if maybe does it think it's there, and it's just, can I jump between them? No, that's annoying. I don't know what's going on, but it's, the drawing is there, and that's just disappeared. I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with, it doesn't like being captured by OBS. I don't know. I haven't used Rhino Player in a while using OBS, so that might be what's going on. But take my word for it. Hopefully you see it. Like, you can see it clearly. There's a real push forward here. Yeah, it just doesn't want to draw it. I don't get it. Oh well. Sorry. I wish I could show you, but it definitely is. I would imagine probably about a gap of probably between here and here, I think, is the measurement that I would imagine it's undulating during that. So I would experiment with that a little bit. Experiment with just trying to, so that when you're watching this from the side, you don't get this feeling that the hips are just static on that plane. It helps feel like you're driving. That run should feel like you're driving forward, but if you have no feeling of like connecting the push of the legs and the torso, all this effort that's going into pushing you on every one of those strides, if you don't see and feel that thrust relative to the camera, in this case, a static camera that's just viewing it from the side, or in the case of a video game that's going to be playing inside of a capsule that the camera's probably attached to, so that this movement will be relative to the camera and measurable. It'll help sell the idea of energy and thrust forward. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. I talked about a lot of things. Hopefully it was helpful. I really appreciated you sending this in. And like I mentioned earlier, if you have need of my services or any one of our services after you take another stab at this, then please don't hesitate, because we're always here for you. Welcome to the community, and I hope to see you around more. Cheers.